Good morning, welcome. I have the announcements about the life of our community. There'll be a screening of a film about neurodivergence this Friday at 2 p.m. in the Rafos Hall, which is the place where you are now, and it'll be hosted both by Julia and by Suzanne. Talent Night is coming, Saturday, December 7th. We start at 7:30 and end in about an hour and a half. It'll be hosted by MC Allison. You can sign up when you arrive, and everyone is welcome to perform in whatever way you would like. 2 new shows are coming to our upstairs gallery, where you see both art and members of the first choir. The show will be opening November 17th, and it's opening November 24th, and you can meet the artist then. There's Printed Pluralism, a group show, and a solo show by Drew Nelson. Good news, the small groups information went out in the weekly announcements. They should be up on the board in the cappuccino room, and there are sign-up sheets on the table. And a few words now about the small groups on the next slide. Lectio Divina, divine readings with Reverend Sally. Those will be taking place the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month between 7 and 8. And they're looking at scripture, and of course, as you use, the whole world is our scripture. So it's a way of looking for the deeper meaning, and everyone is invited to participate. If you're interested to register, email reverend.sally@nuuc.ca. And I presume that'll be online because Reverend Sally is in the US during those dates. Ooh, scary picture. Exploring divination. This small group will explore ways of looking and understanding the world. There'll be we'll look at tarot, we'll look at astrology, we'll look at the I Ching, tea leaf readings, and so on. It'll be meeting at 7:30 every second Thursday starting February 27th. There's a limit of 12 people to the group, and if you're interested, please contact me either here at NUUC, by email, or by OWL.
There are sign-up sheets in the cappuccino room right under the display.
Yes, there are. Yeah, I said those. There's a multi-faith marketplace coming up. That will be on December 8th between 2 and 5, and that's put on by the DMC, the 3 congregations that live in this building. That's us, the DJC, East End United, and the Pakistani Community Center will be joining as well. So if you're interested, that's December 8th between 2 and 5. And now a message from our Finance Committee.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Kendrew. I am your friendly neighborhood treasurer. I'm also the chair of the Finance Committee, and this is just a very quick announcement just to let you all know, as you've already surmised, we are approaching the end of the year, and we're a little bit behind on our contributions. We're about 10% away from where we had projected to be at this point in the year. So I'm just asking you all if you could add 10% to your contribution, and that would really help us all out quite a bit. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kendra. There will be Sacred Circle dancing in 6 days, Saturday, November 23rd, between 9:45 a.m. and 12 noon in the Herndale Room, which is just below us. Simple, repetitive steps taught and danced in a circle to music. For more information, contact Moira, who I don't think is here today. It's always great when 2 of our favorite groups come together. We're getting both the Ukulele Orchestra of Toronto and Gathering Sparks, who've been here a number of times. That's Saturday, December 14th at 7 p.m., taking place here. Our services are created by our staff and volunteers on the neighborhood side, and I'll be getting to the wonderful people from First later on. We have Reverend Sally Fritchie, who's our minister, Suzanne Mazars, our music director, Julia Thompson, our lifespan learning director. I will be your service weaver, and Carlos Garcia, who's been heroically dealing with gremlins at the AV desk and in Zoom. And we thank everyone else who's named in the cappuccino room who contributes to the service. Next Sunday, Love at the Center, Pluralism. We'll conclude our Pluralism 6 weeks with a community wisdom service. The speakers will be you, the congregation. Music from the Spirit Choir, service weaver will be Deb Bertizon, and Time for All Ages from Julia Thompson. So I start by acknowledging that the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations are the treaty holders on this land, and that the Wendat, Anishinaabeg Nation, and Haudenosaunee Confederacy lived here before me and are living here now, together with other First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. I offer my gratitude to our First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and all our relations. I will work to honor those teachings. This territory was included in the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement around 1142 between the Anishinaabeg and Haudenosaunee nations to peaceably share and care for the areas around the Great Lakes. May we renew our commitment to help heal the wounds of our past and our present in the essential work of ongoing reconciliation. And now, as we begin our service, I invite Reverend Jonipher up to light our chalice and ask you to join with us in saying our chalice lighting words, which will be projected on the screen. As we light our chalice, may a flame kindle within us the warmth of passion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth. And now I invite you to join in our chalice lighting song. And now, please rise in spirit and in body as you are able to join in singing the hymn. So welcome to our joint service between Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Congregation and First Unitarian of Toronto, both in person and to those people who are joining us online. We welcome you, whether you're joining us from around the corner or from around the world, and whether you're a longtime member of either Unitarian community or with us for the first time. You belong here because you are here. I'm Peter Marmorek, pronouns he, him, and I'll be your service weaver for today's service. We have an optional wiggle room just over in that direction where you can go to if you need a place where you can hear but not be heard. Their room has a couch for some and toys for others. At the sound desk, we have assisted listening devices if you'd like to try them out. I'm supported today by pianist Adam Sakiyama, as well as our AV technician, Carlos Garcia. As well, we have two directors of Lifespan Learning with us, Angela Klassen from First and Julia Thompson from Neighborhood. We have Dallas Bergen leading the choir, and Adam I've already mentioned on piano. And I'd like to extend a special welcome to our guest speaker today, Reverend Dr. Jonipher Kwong. For those at Neighborhood who aren't familiar with Reverend J, his ministry has included Hawaii and California, and his pluralistic and ecumenical background ranges from Mennonite to Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a great joy to have him here in our month of pluralism. I was excited to hear that Reverend Jonipher will be talking about trauma as I come to that subject with some experience. My parents and grandparents were all Holocaust survivors, from mom's side in Germany, from dad's in Austria. On Kristallnacht, which was 85 years ago this week, 1,400 synagogues and over 7,500 Jewish businesses across Nazi Germany were destroyed. Jewish homes and sacred spaces were shattered. I grew up knowing that story. But I also grew up knowing that when the mob came to my grandparents' house, their cook, who was Catholic, went out to greet them and said, "Why are you here? You know these people, they've done nothing to you." And the mob went away and left the house untouched. So I learned that some Germans did stand up for my family. There's more stories, and my trauma was lessened. I learned it's important to stand up for others in times when they can't. As Peter Levine said, the paradox of trauma is that it has the power to destroy and the power to transform and resurrect. Now it's time to greet your neighbors, and we have many neighbors, so greet both the people you know and some people you don't, and when you're done, turn around and face the projector, which is how the people on Zoom will see, and wave at them. I'll sound the chimes.
What a joy it is to come together as two congregations and have fellowship. We're so grateful to be here. This is the First Unitarian Choir, and we love coming into this both beautiful visual aesthetic and a fantastic acoustic as well. So we've taken opportunity to sing something going back to the Renaissance, Sicut Cervus by Palestrina. As the deer longs for water, so my soul longs for God.
See Hello. Good morning. Hi. So this is the time for all ages. It's going to be a different kind of time for all ages, since I'm so happy and excited that Angela, my friend Angela, is going to be doing the story with me. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. I think we're organized, and I'd like to invite the kids. Come on. You wanna sit here? And I want to thank Ava for the lovely bracelet. Thank you. All right. Do you want to introduce the story?
I'm so jealous of your friendship bracelet. Everybody's
It's
got
mine.
friendship bracelets this week.
Nobody is going to take this away from me. And it goes with your nice nail polish.
It does.
All the rainbows on your fingers.
So our story is Tellaluna, a modern classic which some of us know and others of us have not heard before. In a warm and sultry forest far away, there once lived a mother fruit bat and her new baby. Oh, how Mother Bat loved her soft, tiny baby. "I'll name you Tellaluna," she crooned. Each night, Mother Bat would carry Tellaluna clutched to her breast as she flew out to search for food. Can you see the picture of her on the screen? One night, as Mother Bat followed the heavy scent of ripe fruit, an owl spied her. Uh-oh. On silent wings, the powerful bird swooped down upon the bats. Dodging and shrieking, Mother Bird tried to escape, but the owl struck again and again, knocking Tellaluna into the air. Her baby wings were as limp and useless as wet paper. Down, down she went, faster and faster, into the forest below. The dark, leafy tangle of branches caught Tellaluna as she fell. One twig was small enough for Stellaluna's tiny feet. Wrapping her wings about her, she clutched the thin branch, trembling with cold and fear. "Mother," Tellaluna squeaked, "where are you?" By daybreak, the baby bat could hold on no longer. Down, down again she dropped.
Flump! Tellaluna landed head first in a soft, downy nest, startling the 3 baby birds who lived there. Tellaluna quickly clambered from the nest and hung out of sight below it. She listened to the babble of the 3 birds. "Gip, gip, what was that?" cried Flap. "I don't know, but it's hanging by its feet," chirped Flitter. "Shh, here comes Mama," hissed Pip. Many, many times that day, Mama Bird flew away, always returning with food for her babies. Tellaluna was terribly hungry, but not for the crawly things Mama Bird brought. Finally, though, the little bat could bear it no longer. She climbed into the nest, closed her eyes, and opened her mouth. Plop! It dropped a big green grasshopper.
Well, Tellaluna learned to be like the birds. She stayed awake all day and slept at night. She ate bugs, even though they tasted awful. Her bat ways were quickly disappearing, except for one thing. Tellaluna liked to sleep hanging by her feet, because that's what bats do. Once, when Mama was away, the curious baby birds decided to try it too. Oh, no. When Mama Bird came home, she saw 8 tiny feet gripping the edge of the nest. "Eek," she cried, "get back up here this instant. You're going to fall and break your necks." You'll poke your eye out. The birds clambered back into the nest, but Mama Bird stopped Tellaluna. "You are teaching my children to do bad things. I will not let you back into this nest unless you promise to obey all the rules of this house." Tellaluna promised. She ate bugs without making faces. She slept in the nest at night and she didn't hang by her feet. Stellaluna behaved as a good bird should. All the babies grew quickly. Soon the nest became crowded. Mama Bird told them it was time to learn to fly. One by one, Pip, Flitter, Flap, and Stellaluna jumped from the nest. Their wings worked. I'm just like them, thought Stellaluna. I can fly too.
Pip, Flitter, and Flap landed gracefully on a branch. Stellaluna tried to do the same. How embarrassing. I will fly all day, Stellaluna told herself. Then no one will see how clumsy I am. The next day, Pip, Flitter, Flap, and Stellaluna went flying far from home. They flew for hours, exercising their new wings. The sun is setting, warned Flitter. We'd better go home or we will get lost in the dark, said Flap. But Stellaluna had flown far ahead and was nowhere to be seen. The three anxious birds went home without her.
All alone, Stellaluna flew and flew until her wings ached and she dropped into a tree. I promised not to hang by my feet, Stellaluna sighed. So she hung by her thumbs and soon fell asleep. She didn't hear the soft sound of wings coming near. Hey, a loud voice said, why are you hanging upside down? Stellaluna's eyes opened wide. She saw a most peculiar face. I'm not upside down, you are, Stellaluna said. Ah, but you're a bat. Bats hang by their feet. You are hanging by your thumbs, so that makes you upside down, the creature said. I'm a bat. I'm hanging by my feet. That makes me right side up. Stella was confused. Mama Bird told me I was upside down. She said I was wrong. Wrong for a bird, maybe, but not for a bat.
More bats gathered round to see the strange young bat who behaved like a bird. Stellaluna told them her story. You ate bugs, stuttered one. You slept at night, gasped another. How very strange, they all muttered. Wait, let me look at this child. A bat pushed through the crowd. An owl attacked you, she asked. Sniffing Stellaluna's fur, she whispered, oh, you are Stellaluna. You are my baby. You escaped the owl, cried Stellaluna. You survived? Yes, said Mother Bat as she wrapped her wings around Stellaluna. Come with me, and I'll show you where to find the most delicious fruit. You'll never have to eat another bug as long as you live.
But it's nighttime, Stellaluna squeaked. We can't fly in the dark or we'll crash into trees. We're bats, said Mother Bat. We can see in darkness. Come with us. Stellaluna was afraid, but she let go of the tree and dropped into the deep blue sky. Stellaluna could see. She felt as though rays of light shone from her eyes. She was able to see everything in her path. Soon the bats found a mango tree, and Stellaluna ate as much of the fruit as she could hold. I'll never eat another bug as long as I live, cheered Stellaluna as she stuffed herself full. I must tell Pip, Flitter, and Flap.
The next day, Stellaluna went to visit the birds. Come with me and meet my bat family, said Stellaluna. Okay, let's go, agreed Pip. They hang by their feet and they fly at night and they eat the best food in the world, Stellaluna explained to the birds on the way. As the birds flew among the bats, Flap said, I feel upside down here. So the birds hung by their feet. Wait until dark, Stellaluna said excitedly. We will fly at night. When night came, Stellaluna flew away. Pip, Flitter and Flap leapt from the tree to follow her. Oh, I can't see a thing, yelled Pip. Neither can I, howled the Flitter. Aye, shrieked Flap. They're gonna crash, gasped Tellaluna. I must rescue them. Tellaluna swooped about, grabbing her friends in the air. She lifted them to a tree, and the birds grasped a branch. Tellaluna hung from the limb above them.
We're safe, said Tellaluna. Then she sighed. I wish you could see in the dark, too. We wish you could land on your feet, Flitter replied. Pip and Flap nodded. They perched in silence for a long time. How can we be so different and feel so much alike, mused Flitter. And how can we feel so different and be so much alike, wondered Pip. I think this is quite a mystery, Flap chirped. I agree, said Tellaluna, but we're friends, and that's a fact.
That's it.
And that's our story for today.
All right, we are going to explore the catacombs of the basement. As I say, while the adults, stay here. All right, let's go.
Children grow in spirit. Children grow in spirit. Grow in spirit, children. Grow in spirit, children. Grow in spirit, grow in spirit, grow in spirit, children.
And what a great symbol we have here of a chalice that is large enough to hold all our joys and our sorrows. May all that has been shared here strengthen and renew the bonds of this beloved community. In joy and in sorrow, in both struggle and success, may we together embrace life's blessings and endure its challenges in the sacred hope that we might grow stronger through both. Will you join with me now, please, for a time of reflection, of prayer. This is a blessing of metta, or loving kindness in the Buddhist tradition. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free. And when we put our palms together in Gasho, we say, Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Let us take a few more minutes in silence and breathe with one another.
I invite you to hear this reading by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry from their book that just came out a couple of years ago called What Happened to You, which is the inspiration for today's sermon. Most people who are in the process of excavating the reasons they do what they do are met at some point with resistance. You're blaming the past. Your past is not an excuse. This is true. Your past is not an excuse, but it is an explanation, offering insight into the questions so many of us ask ourselves. Why do I behave the way that I behave? Why do I feel the way that I do? For me, there is no doubt that our strengths, vulnerabilities, and unique responses are an expression of what happened to us. Very often, what happened takes years to reveal itself. It takes courage to confront our actions, peel back the layers of trauma in our lives, and expose the raw truth of our past. But this is where the healing begins. So today we're going to be talking about healing and trauma. And as I mentioned a couple weeks ago when I first started this series at First U, this is a trigger warning that if any of you feel at some point that you have been triggered, please feel free to step outside or at some point in the near future talk to either a religious professional or a therapeutic professional. So that is my warning. And I also wanted to say a little bit more about this whole idea of ancestral trauma that I talked about a couple weeks ago, because I know I forgot to mention one critical aspect of it, and thank you, Peter, for being so brave and so bold to share your story from your own family experience. And it was indeed just a week ago in 1938 when Kristallnacht hit Europe like a storm. And it was only a couple weeks ago, not so far away in Europe, in a place called the United States, where it seems like we are trying to relive the past, that the past is somehow not so much a distant part of who we are, but it's very much alive today. And so that's what I want to talk about, is the whole idea that there are many different categories of trauma, ancestral trauma being just one of them. We all know that in the present and in our current lived reality, we too probably experience and accumulate trauma somewhere along the way. Is that not right? I see a few nods. So let me talk a little bit more about that, because there's also personal trauma that each of us experiences, and there's collective trauma that all of us have experienced. Take the recent pandemic lockdown, for example. If that's not a collective trauma, I don't know what is, right? And many of us are still reeling from that, many being COVID cautious. Many of you who are joining online, for example, still have difficulty going out in public and interacting with other people because of the trauma from the pandemic. And in addition to this collective trauma, we could also witness it within the walls of our congregations, because there is such a thing, unfortunately, as spiritual trauma and spiritual violence. And I wanted to talk to you more about that, because we are, after all, part of the spiritual community, right? And I believe that many of us, especially Unitarian Universalists, have come from a background where there was probably some kind of spiritual trauma that was experienced. Whether it's going through Sunday school and asking too many questions and questioning the dogma that the church probably taught you growing up, right? That's one form of trauma. Or the trauma of not being accepted for who you are as a 2S LGBTQ plus individual. I believe that the church has much to atone for, especially when it comes to our treatment of transgender individuals. I want to talk about that because on November 20th is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, when we remember those who don't identify as either of the binaries or perhaps the gender that they were quote unquote born with, right? And the amount of abuse that they have had to endure in society, for many of them, costing them their very lives. And I must say to all my clergy colleagues out there who preach a gospel of hate, that is antithetical to the definition of gospel. Because the gospel is supposed to be good news, and a gospel is only a gospel if it's a gospel of love. And anyone who preaches hate and fear and discrimination is not preaching the gospel. Amen. So let's be clear about that the church has much to atone for the amount of spiritual trauma and violence inflicted upon two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning, and our allies over the years. And on behalf of clergy everywhere, I apologize for that, and I hope that we can do better. Because believe it or not, as Unitarian Universalists, we too have had to turn away to as LGBTQ plus people over the years. And it's only been recently that we've been working on trying to become more welcoming to everyone of all backgrounds and identities. And I talked a little bit when I talked about the series on trust, about how the Catholic Church, for example, has lost trust in its parishioners because of the clergy misconduct and abuse and child sexual abuse that has taken place. Well, guess what? We found out recently it wasn't just the Catholic Church. The Anglican Church has also had to deal with and have a reckoning around the issue of child abuse and child sexual abuse within its walls. Anybody heard recently about the resignation of Archbishop Justin Welby, right? The Archbishop of Canterbury? That too is a definition of trauma that the church has inflicted. And again, unless we brush it off and say that those are those congregations that we left, and thank goodness we left those congregations. We Unitarian Universalists, as in 70% of our congregations have experienced some kind of misconduct in one form of another, be it sexual or bullying behavior or substance abuse or any other kind of financial misconduct, for example. 70% of our congregations have witnessed that. I haven't done a deep dive yet into First Use history, but I've already heard there's a couple of stories lingering out there, right? Of stuff that happened with clergy people who we place our trust on, and yet things don't necessarily go the direction that we place our trust on. And it's no wonder, between coming out of congregations and churches that have had a history of abuse and then coming in to Unitarian Universalist congregation and still experiencing some of those abuses there, not to mention perhaps difficult departures of clergy over the years, right? That all of that collective trauma still lingers in our system. And it's no wonder that some of it manifests itself as a distrust or an allergy towards authority, right? And, you know, my colleagues could yell a loud amen to that, right? Because we've certainly witnessed it. And so the question doesn't become necessarily what's wrong, what's wrong with people, but rather, again, as Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey pointed out, a better question is, what happened to you? What happened in the past that caused this kind of reaction? Because as we all know, when we say that something traumatic changes you, it literally changes you, as in it changes your very DNA, and it takes the form of genetic memory. Again, when we talk about ancestral trauma, we talk about genetic memory of what happened before is affecting us now because of what happened to our ancestors, right? And I think when we say that it changes us, it changes the core of who we are and our perspective in the world. So what are some possible reactions when trauma happens in our lives? One way of reacting is to simply stay in a state of shock, which again is what I believe happened a couple weeks ago in the United States and beyond, is there's just radio silence on my Facebook post, for example, right the day after, right? That everyone was in such a state of shock. And again, I've served congregations before where misconduct has happened and people don't even want to talk about it because it was so painful. And they claim that it happened so long ago, why do we need to even address it now? So it's much easier sometimes to deny it and to repress it. But guess what? That doesn't necessarily make the problem go away, does it? But that is still one reaction. And a second reaction is kind of the opposite end of that, which is hypervigilance, right? So hypervigilance is when you're on alert all the time and when you're doom scrolling on your app with the news, right? And when you feel like the tiger is chasing you. So you got to do something to protect yourself and to make sure that you're safe all the time. So that's a form of hypervigilance, and consequently, many people literally lose sleep because of their hypervigilance, or they're just constantly stressed out all the time. And so this is where we get the whole concept of PTSD from, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder is that we're just constantly not even thinking about the past stresses or the past trauma that happened, but we kind of feel like it's still happening right this very instant. And another way to deal with it is projection. So whenever we experience violence, for example, in our lives, we then project it onto others. Remember that saying of hurt people, or that pain that is not transformed is transmitted and projected onto others, right? Like, Rev J, you're just like all other ministers out there. You cannot possibly be trusted because you have a Rev in front of your name, right? So that's a form of violence that's inflicted upon others. And it's also another form, like I mentioned before, is that people who have experienced child sexual abuse are more likely to then be a perpetrator in the future, thereby continuing that vicious cycle of child abuse. Research has shown us, right? So that's another reaction to trauma. And yet another reaction to trauma might be just to, hang on one second, let me make sure that I got my notes right here. Another reaction to trauma might be to just simply numb yourself. So in order to make the pain go away, just imbibe as freely as possible, or take your drug of choice, or be as promiscuous as possible and sleep with as many people as possible, right? That's another way to try to hide or mask the pain when trauma comes our way. And finally, another form of dealing with trauma might be self-sabotage. And again, we witnessed this with some of our congregations that I've served anyway, where there is no possible way that a UU congregation in such a large city could only have such a small number of people who are members. I know that membership growth isn't necessarily just about self-sabotage, but I kind of wonder sometimes, if somehow or another we give off the impression that there's something that is too good to be true, and so when we start growing and when we start seeing new people, there's this unconscious way of somehow turning off newcomers, right, and self-sabotaging ourselves. So these are some of the ways that we perhaps could experience trauma both personally and in our collective lives as a whole. And these are some of the symptoms of what it means when trauma manifests itself. So the bigger question I have is, how do we get to the root of it? And for me, it begins by asking this question of what happened to you, instead of just taking a look at the symptoms and saying, what is wrong with you? What the hell is the matter with you, right? Which is so tempting to do. Like with that story with Tellaluna, for example, whenever we witness something that's a behavior that's a bit off or weird, we just label it as, she's just bat bleep crazy, right? That's our default reaction, especially, I'm not gonna ask for a show of hands, but if there's any therapists in the room, the first place we go to is what? The DSM manual, right? It must exist in the diagnostic and, what does that stand for? Statistical manual, right? Of mental disorder. Yeah, Adele, you're obviously into this. And I heard not anymore, but perhaps that's a good sign that we don't automatically pathologize people. And I get that you need to code it for insurance purposes, of course, right? So you do need something from the DSM manual, but what if we were to approach it not from the perspective of blaming and shaming the individual who is seeking help, but rather asking the question of what happened to Tellaluna, for example? What was her childhood upbringing like that brought her to this place of eating bugs instead of fruits, right? Of what happened to people that they react a certain way whenever you interact with them. So for me, that's a much more helpful approach, so to speak, and more compassionate one to try to figure out the history and the story behind why people behave the way that they behave. And so Dr. Perry came up with his own framework, which he calls the neurosequential model of therapeutics. Because God knows that's what we need, are more acronyms, right? NMT is a way to deal with people, especially children who have experienced trauma. So therapy, by the way, here's the interesting about therapy, because most of us have this preconceived notion that when you go to therapy, what happens is that it undoes your past. It's kind of like just hitting the delete button, and somehow your past will magically disappear, right? As if it never existed. But rather, this theory says that what it takes is more like, you know how when you're trying to build a new road, you don't just get rid of the old dirt road, but perhaps you build another concrete road right next to it. And you build it kilometer by kilometer. You don't build the road all at once. And at some point, perhaps, our brains could also rewire itself so that we could think, oh, you know what? It's much easier and much smoother ride to go on this concrete road, right? So that's kind of what therapy is. It's kind of like resetting your mindset, but a little bit at a time. Because when you try to do it all at once, when it's just a 50-minute session or whatever, it can be kind of overwhelming, and it can be a lot to deal with all that pain. But when you do it a little bit at a time is what the model suggests, right? The NMT model is to, for example, with children, just be with them and be present with them. Instead of just asking right away, like, what happened? Do you want to talk about it? And let me psychoanalyze you, and let me give you some tips and advice on how to live your life. Instead of doing that right away, which could kind of be off-putting and overwhelming, kind of like, just be present and ask, how's your day going? You know, what did you do today? And then do that in small chunks. So maybe 5 minutes at a time. And the sense of being present and engaged and affirming, eventually over time, is what builds those new neural pathways, right? That's why it's called neurosequential, because it's a developmental model. So it happens one tiny piece at a time. And what if that is what being part of a religious and a spiritual community is all about? To be present for each other every single Sunday, to show up for each other, to sing music together, to be in community with one another. What if that were to be the beginning of our building that road ahead of us that's made of concrete instead of just a dirt road? Let me give you a quote from Dr. Perry, who says that the thing that is stronger than trauma is connectedness, because connectedness has the power to counterbalance adversity. And he says that there are 4 pillars of traditional healing. They include 1, connection to the clan and the natural world. Notice how healing it is whenever we go out in nature and go for a hike or just be at one with the trees, right? And the second is regulating rhythm through dance, drumming, and song. Did you notice that after a Truth and Reconciliation session in South Africa, apartheid, post-apartheid, whenever they would have those traumatic moments when you recount the stories of violence that happened, they would dance afterwards, and they would sing afterwards, right? And again, the body keeps the score, so it's also the body where we could release some of this trauma from. The third is a set of beliefs, values, and stories that brought meaning to even senseless, random trauma. And again, hopefully this is what I try to do on Sunday mornings, is try to weave together these stories so that we could come up with a way to make meaning out of it and to have a theological grounding coming from our Unitarian Universalist values on what it means to deal with trauma. And here's the other one, which I talked about 2 weeks ago. On occasion, natural hallucinogens or other plant-derived substances used to facilitate healing with the guidance of a healer or an elder, which is, again, my ayahuasca experience, right? For those of you who missed it, you could still view it online. And it's not surprising, Dr. Perry says, that today's best practices in trauma treatment are basically versions of these 4 things. There's nothing new under the sun, after all, right? So we tried these before, but they're coming back into vogue and repackaged differently, but they're tried and true, and I would highly recommend taking a look, perhaps for yourself, as to how you could deal with trauma in this way. So let me just do a little quick footnote before I end here, and to say that for those who are historically marginalized among us, so whether you identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous person of color, or to us LGBTQ+, or again, any of these other acronyms out there, right? If that applies to you, know that you already come pre-traumatized by society, basically. because we're relational beings. And when we ostracize and marginalize certain groups of people, that already inflicts trauma on them. So when we talk about doing this anti-racism and anti-oppression work within our congregations, in other words, the 8th principle, right? What we're doing is really trauma-informed ministry. And the statement that we're making is we want to be a trauma-informed congregation, right? Because at the end of the day, there's no quick fix for any of this, which is why I'm spending 3 sermons talking about it, right? And my sermons keep going over because, you know, we UUs don't have the theology, and I wish we did, of that I could just put my hand to someone's forehead and say, be healed. And they would fall over and say, hallelujah, I'm healed, right? Unfortunately, we don't have such a quick fix kind of theology. So for us, it takes scientifically proven methodologies and treatment modalities and programs that we're part of. And again, by being in community together. Kids, you know what? If you're gonna come up to me and say, you know what, Rev J, that's all fine and dandy for those people who have experienced trauma, but I've been fortunate enough to live my life without experiencing any of that. But guess what? I still have a job for you. So for the rest of the community, we still need that sense of connection. So how could you continue to show up for another person, even if it's not you, right? That's what it means to live into brave spaces and to build beloved community together. I just want to end by saying that none of us can undo the past, but we can do something about our current reality. And we don't have to just stay in this PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder mentality all the time, but rather, according to Winfrey and Perry, we can engage in what's known as post-traumatic wisdom, PTW, and have that emerge as our current reality. So can we all buy into this so that I could shut up now and we could all take a few deep breaths together?
Thank you so much for those thoughts and ideas. So we can't undo the past, but in our states of post-traumatic wisdom, I ask you to think about the congregations and how, like all living things, they need nurture and substance. If you contribute by pre-authorized withdrawals, we thank you. But when you contribute to the life of your community, you reaffirm your life within it. There are envelopes in the seats pockets. You can put your name and the name of the congregation you would like your donation to go to. We have a QR code for a neighborhood. There's one just outside the door for First. If you hand in a donation without a name, or if you just contribute cash, all donations will be divided between the 2 congregations. I asked the greeters to bring the baskets up here to me when the collection has been completed. We will now pause and Adam will play. Thank you. If you have found love and acceptance here, if you have known kindred spirits here, if you have found a home here, this offering is your token of gratitude for our common life as we build the common good. Now, please rise in spirit and in body as you are able for closing song number 1018, Come and Go With Me.
Thank you all for being with us today. We hope you have found connection and meaning in the service, and we look forward to seeing you next week, whether it's here at Neighborhood, virtually with First U, whatever floats your boat. Could be all of the above, actually. As we extinguish our chalice, please join me in singing the chalice extinguishing song. And let us hear these words by the Reverend Andrea Hopkins-Kemper, who is a UU minister. This work isn't all prayers and beautiful moments, nor is it laments and trauma. It's not even both and, because this work is something greater than you, greater than us, greater than the whole of those we serve. This work is a calling, and we're doing it. Day after day, night after night, page after page, visit after visit, we are doing the hard and holy work to which we are called. That matters. That fact matters, because when we feel we did not do enough, or we did not care enough, or we did not do something enough, still we were there in that moment, with that patient or that family, giving, loving, ministering. You me, us, religious professionals and lay leaders, holy witnesses to the divine in all of its messy humanity. Us. We did it. We are doing it. We will do it again. And every time we do, it will be enough. For we cannot give more than we have. And for us, we give what we can when there is nobody else to give. And that is enough. And so are you. You are enough. We are always enough. May it be well with you this day, and may it be well with those souls entrusted in our care for however fleeting a moment. May it be well. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. And namaste.